Stop. Before you scroll past this, I need you to hear something. Right now, as you're watching this, something is happening that most people have completely missed. Not a theory, not a prediction, something that is literally unfolding in real time. 2 days ago, on March 18th, 2026, the Federal Reserve made a decision. And most people heard the headline and moved on. That was a mistake. Because buried inside that decision is a setup so explosive that the next 6 to 12 months in Bitcoin could look nothing like what the charts are telling you right now. Bitcoin is sitting at $70 or $123 today, down from an all-time high of $126,000 just 5 months ago. People are scared. People are selling. People are waiting for something to confirm their thesis. And that is exactly the problem. Because while retail investors are waiting for confirmation, BlackRock is not waiting. BlackRock is buying $600 million worth of Bitcoin in a single week. And here's the part that should shake you awake. They're buying while the price is suppressed. They're buying while you're uncertain. They're buying while the Fed is playing chess with the global economy. If these two forces, the Fed's liquidity cycle and BlackRock's silent accumulation, collide at the same time, we're not talking about a normal rally. We are talking about a repricing of Bitcoin as a global macro asset. Stay with me. Because what I'm about to show you is something that most financial commentators are not connecting. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why the next move in Bitcoin could be the most important one of this decade. And if you're new here, welcome to the Wealth Continuum. Hit subscribe. Because what we cover here is not noise, it's the signal behind the noise. Let me ask you something. When do you think Bitcoin moves? Most people say when there's positive news, when sentiment shifts, when a famous person tweets something. Wrong. Bitcoin moves when two very specific things happen at the same time. Number one, liquidity returns to the system. Number two, supply disappears from the market. That's it. Everything else is noise. Think about 2020. The Fed flooded the system with money. Institutions stepped in quietly. And Bitcoin went from $7,000 to $60,000 in less than a year. People who were waiting for confirmation missed the entire first leg. Now here's the critical insight I want you to burn into your brain before we go any further. Bitcoin is no longer a retail asset. It's an institutional, macro-driven, liquidity-sensitive asset. It doesn't respond to hype anymore. It responds to the same forces that move sovereign debt, oil, and gold. And right now, on March 20th, 2026, those forces are beginning to align in a way that hasn't happened since 2020. Here's the setup. The Fed just held rates at 3.5 to 3.75%. They cut 3 times last year, September, October, December, and then they paused. But the dot plot, the Fed's own internal forecast, still projects one more cut in 2026. That cut hasn't happened yet. And BlackRock's IBIT, the world's most powerful Bitcoin ETF, just crossed $55 billion in assets under management while hoovering up supply like a machine. Two forces, one collision course. Stay with me, because the mechanics of this are more important than the headline. Let's talk about the Federal Reserve. On March 18th, 2026, just 2 days ago, the FOMC voted 11-1 to keep rates unchanged at 3.5 to 3.75%. 11-1. There was a dissent. One member, Stephen Moran, actually voted to cut rates immediately. Think about what that means. Even inside the Fed, the most cautious institution in American finance, there are people who think rates should be lower right now. The Fed cut rates 3 times in the back half of 2025. Then they paused. Why? Because inflation is still running hot. The PCE, the Fed's preferred inflation gauge, came in at 2.8%. Core PCE at 3.1%, both well above the 2% target. And now you've got oil prices spiking because of the conflict in the Middle East. So the Fed is stuck. Cut rates, inflation gets worse. Keep rates high, something breaks. Here's the question I want you to sit with for a second. What happens when something breaks? Because here's what Powell actually said 2 days ago. And I want you to pay attention to this. He said monetary policy is not on a preset course. He said they will make decisions meeting by meeting. He said the bar for cutting is, quote, a little bit higher. But he also kept the cut in the dot plot. One cut is still projected for 2026. And the dissent? That tells you the pressure inside the Fed to ease is building. History doesn't repeat exactly, but it rhymes. In 2019, the Fed paused and cut 3 times before anything broke. In 2020, they went to 0 overnight when everything broke. The question is not if the Fed cuts again. The question is when. And when they cut, or when something forces their hand, what do you think happens to hard assets with fixed supply? Stay with me, we're getting there. Now let me steelman the other side. Because if you're going to think clearly about this, you have to consider both scenarios. What if the Fed doesn't cut? What if oil prices stay elevated? What if inflation reaccelerates? What if they hold all year? Here's what most people don't understand about that scenario. Higher for longer is not neutral for Bitcoin. It's a slow pressure cooker. The longer rates stay elevated, the more stress builds in the system. Corporate debt refinancing becomes a problem. Regional banks start showing cracks again. Credit markets tighten. Treasury yields stay elevated. The 10-year is sitting at 4.23% right now, and that means the cost of capital stays high everywhere. And here's the thing about the Fed that people keep forgetting. They do not cut when things are stable. They cut when something is starting to break. They cut when the labor market shows real cracks. Job gains are already described as low in their own statement. The unemployment rate is expected to hit 4.4% by year end. They cut when financial conditions tighten beyond their comfort zone. So ask yourself this. Is the Fed more likely to cut because things are going great or because something starts going wrong? And when they cut under pressure, when they react because something broke, what does that do to market psychology? It doesn't cause a slow drift higher. It causes a repricing, fast, violent, unexpected. And historically, Bitcoin has been one of the first assets to price that in. Now let's talk about the other force in this equation. And this one, I'm telling you, this one is the part that nobody is connecting to the Fed narrative. BlackRock, the largest asset manager on the planet. Over $10 trillion in assets under management. They launched IBIT, the iShares Bitcoin Trust, in January of 2024. By early 2026, IBIT crossed $54 billion in AUM. And it just crossed $55 billion. Let me put that in context. $55 billion in a single Bitcoin ETF. IBIT now holds approximately 485,000 Bitcoin. 485,000 Bitcoin out of a total supply that will never, by design, exceed 21 million. And they're not slowing down. In the week of March 9th to 13th alone, just last week, IBIT pulled in $600 million in net inflows. $600 million in 5 days, $109 million on Monday, $185 million on Tuesday, $115 million on Wednesday, $46 million on Thursday, $143 million on Friday. And IBIT accounted for 78% of all Bitcoin ETF inflows for that week. 78%. This is not hype buying. This is not retail FOMO. This is systematic, institutional daily accumulation of a fixed supply asset. And here's where it gets dangerous. In Q1 of 2026 alone, the first 3 months of this year, IBIT added over 75,000 Bitcoin to its holdings. 75,000 Bitcoin. Gone from the open market. Locked in cold storage at Coinbase custody. Now think about this for a second. Bitcoin miners produce roughly 450 new Bitcoin per day right now. That's the post-halving issuance rate. 450 new Bitcoin per day. BlackRock's daily inflow pace in just last week averaged $120 million per day. At $70,000 per coin, that's roughly 100 Bitcoin worth of buying power per day from one fund, from one company. They're absorbing more than 3 times the daily new supply just through one ETF. So I want to ask you something directly. What happens to the price of anything when demand stays constant or grows and supply keeps disappearing? Think about that. Stay with me, because this is where it gets really interesting. So now you have 2 forces. Force number 1, the Federal Reserve, sitting at 3.5 to 3.75% under political pressure to cut, signaling one more cut in their own dot plot with a dissenting member who wanted to cut immediately. Force number 2, BlackRock, systematically absorbing hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin, pulling $600 million in a single week, with $55 billion already locked up in cold storage. One force controls liquidity. The other force controls access to supply. Now tell me, what happens when these 2 forces collide? When the Fed cuts and new liquidity enters the system, that money needs somewhere to go. Bonds aren't attractive, stocks are expensive, gold is already at record highs, and Bitcoin is sitting at $70,000, down 44% from its all-time high. To institutional money, that looks like a discount. And at the same time, BlackRock and other ETFs have already absorbed a massive percentage of available supply. So you have new money chasing a supply that's already shrinking. Markets don't respond to that slowly. They reprice. Not 10%, not 20%. Think about what happened the last time this happened. Think about 2020. And I know some of you are thinking, but the situations are different. You're right. They are different. They're actually more extreme this time, and that's exactly what I want to show you next. Let me walk you through 2020, March 2020. Bitcoin crashes to $4,000 on Black Thursday. Everyone is scared. Institutions are selling. Retail is panicking. The Fed responds. They cut rates to 0. They launch QE. They flood the system with liquidity. And then, quietly, institutions start accumulating. MicroStrategy starts buying. Paul Tudor Jones puts 1 to 2% of his portfolio in Bitcoin. Square buys $50 million worth. Retail didn't notice any of this happening. By October 2020, 6 months later, Bitcoin crosses $12,000. By December 2020, 9 months later, Bitcoin crosses $20,000 for the first time ever. By April 2021, 13 months later, Bitcoin hits $64,000. From $4,000 to $64,000, 16 times. And the people who were waiting for confirmation at $12,000 missed the biggest move. The people who were scared at $7,000 missed the entire run. Now here's where 2026 is genuinely different and more explosive. In 2020, institutional buying was fragmented. It was corporate treasuries, family offices, a few hedge funds. In 2026, BlackRock alone controls 485,000 Bitcoin through a single regulated product that advisors, pension funds, and endowments can access in a single click. In 2020, you had to go to Coinbase or Gemini to buy Bitcoin. In 2026, you can buy Bitcoin exposure the same way you buy the S&P 500. The infrastructure has changed completely. In 2020, Bitcoin's total market cap was roughly $130 billion at the lows. Today, it's $1.33 trillion, and it's at a 44% discount to its all-time high. The players are bigger, the access is wider, the supply is tighter, and the macro setup, a Fed holding tight while pressure builds, is hauntingly familiar. So let me ask you something. If you'd been watching in March 2020 and someone told you that the Fed was about to flood the system with liquidity while institutional buyers quietly accumulated Bitcoin at discounted prices, would you have positioned yourself differently? Of course you would have. That is exactly what this video is for. Stay with me. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people will miss this move. Not because they don't have access to the information, not because they lack intelligence. They'll miss it because of how it feels at the start. Right now, Bitcoin at $70,000 doesn't feel bullish. It feels uncertain. There's a conflict in the Middle East. Oil prices are elevated. The Fed is on hold. The market is cautious. The Dow dropped 768 points on the day of the Fed announcement. Nothing about this feels like the start of a massive bull run. And that's exactly the point. The biggest moves in Bitcoin, every single one of them, started when people were most uncertain. Not when things were calm, not when headlines were positive, not when everyone agreed it was time to buy. They started when fear was at its peak and supply was quietly leaving the market. Here's another question for you, and I want you to actually think about this. Right now, the on-chain data shows over 400,000 Bitcoin were accumulated between $60,000 and $70,000 during the recent downturn. Not by retail, by whales. Wallets holding between 100,000 and 1,000 Bitcoin increased their holdings by over 13,000 coins in a single week. They haven't sold. They're not selling. They're waiting. So who's left to sell? The retail investors who are scared, the traders who already sold, the people who are waiting for confirmation. And when those sellers are exhausted, what do you think happens next? There's only one direction left. Let me paint the scenario that most financial commentators aren't willing to say out loud. The Fed is watching four things right now. 1, inflation, still above target, PCE at 2.8%. 2, the labor market, job gains slowing, unemployment creeping toward 4.4%. 3, the Middle East conflict, oil prices surging, supply chains tightening. 4, the debt burden. The U.S. government has trillions in debt to refinance at current rates. That is a slow-motion pressure cooker. The Fed said it themselves 2 days ago. Uncertainty about the economic outlook remains elevated. That sentence, in Fed speak, is a warning signal. Now here's the breaking point scenario. What if oil prices stay elevated for 6 more months? What if one regional bank reports unexpected losses? What if the labor market cracks faster than the Fed's projections? What happens then? The Fed doesn't gradually ease into a cut. They call an emergency meeting. They cut by 50 basis points, maybe 75. They signal more, and liquidity floods into the system, not gradually, overnight. And Bitcoin, which doesn't need permission from anyone to reprice, moves first, before stocks confirm, before bonds confirm, before the mainstream financial media even writes the headline. Because that's what Bitcoin does. It doesn't wait for consensus. It prices in the future before the present catches up. And here's the thing. You don't need a crisis for this to play out. You just need the cut that's already projected in the dot plot. The crisis scenario just makes it faster. Bitcoin doesn't need perfect conditions. It just needs a trigger. And that trigger is already loaded. Stay with me, because we're almost at the part where this all comes together. Look at where we are technically. Bitcoin is sitting at $70,423 today. It's been consolidating between $60,000 and $72,000 for weeks. The 20-day moving average is at $67,700. The 50-day moving average is at $77,200. The 200-day moving average is all the way up at $96,800. That's a massive coil. Volatility has compressed. Price has gone sideways. The market looks boring. But here's what the boring chart is hiding. The derivatives market reset. Overleveraged positions have been flushed. The shorts that piled in expecting a drop to $50,000 got crushed when Bitcoin reclaimed $65,000 in a single session. On February 24th, ETF inflows just posted their longest unbroken streak in 5 months. The Coinbase Premium Index, which tracks U.S. institutional demand, just turned positive for the first time in 40 days. Institutional conviction is coming back. And CryptoQuant is flagging that the next real resistance doesn't start until $75,000 to $85,000, meaning Bitcoin can move $5,000 to $15,000 from here before it even hits real selling pressure. Then if it clears $80,000, analysts are projecting targets of $110,000 to $120,000 in the breakout scenario. And one analyst, macroeconomist Henrik Zeberg, assigns a 25% probability of an overshoot toward $140,000 to $150,000. Think about that number for a second. $150,000. That's more than double from where we are today, from $70,000 to $150,000. And the setup for that move is sitting right in front of us. The market looks calm, but structurally, it's coiled like a spring. Here's what I want you to take away from everything we've covered today. Bitcoin is no longer reacting to headlines. It's reacting to liquidity cycles and institutional flows. The Fed held rates at 3.5 to 3.75% 2 days ago. But they still have a cut in their own forecast. One dissenting member wanted to cut immediately, and the pressure is building from every direction: geopolitical, fiscal, labor market. BlackRock's IBIT holds 485,000 Bitcoin. They pulled in $600 million last week alone. They've added 75,000 Bitcoin to their holdings just this quarter. The supply is disappearing. The cut is coming. The question is not whether this setup is real. The question is, where are you when it triggers? Are you the person who waited for confirmation at $90,000? Are you the person who sold at $70,000 because it felt uncertain? Or are you the person who understood what was happening, who watched the liquidity signals, tracked the institutional flows, and positioned themselves before the crowd figured it out? Here's the reframe I want to leave you with. When the Fed cuts while BlackRock keeps buying, this won't look like a normal bull market. This will look like a repricing. A violent, fast, disorienting repricing of Bitcoin as a global macro asset. The kind of move that creates generational wealth for people who understood the setup, and generational regret for people who didn't. Let me be honest with you. I'm not here to tell you what to do with your money. I'm here to show you what the system is actually doing. Beneath the noise, beneath the headlines, beneath the fear. Because if you're trying to understand where Bitcoin is really going, you can't just watch the price. You have to watch the system. The Fed's dot plot, the ETF flow data, the on-chain whale accumulation, the dissenting votes, the supply dynamics. That's what we do here at the Wealth Continuum every week, every major market event, every signal that matters. If you found value in this breakdown, subscribe. Not because I asked you to, but because what's coming next, in the next 90 days, is the kind of setup that most people won't understand until it's already over. And I don't want you to be one of those people. The Wealth Continuum. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.